So it says that we're now streaming live on Facebook. So welcome everyone.
Hello, hello. MJ and Donna here. So this is the first half hour. This is a question and answer. So people can come on, ask questions. I'm monitoring on Facebook. I am monitoring here in the Zoom room. This half hour from 6:30 to 7 is meant to be a time where people are working on goals and they have questions. They want to talk a little bit about what they're working on. This is your time. So Donna and I are here. We're available for questions, but this is really your time. At 7 o'clock, what we're going to do is we'll wrap up the Q&A, and we will start over again with introductions. We will start over again with sort of what tonight's workshop is about. And the workshop is slated for 6 to 8. 7 to 8. Right? 7 to 8 or 7 to 8:30, Donna?
7 to 8:30.
7 to 8:30. And so with that said, we will wrap up just about 8:30, and we should have some time at the end for some questions for anybody who has questions on the new content. And I don't think I've forgotten anything, but you fill in, Donna, if you think I have.
No, I think you covered everything. I am just going to put in the comments the link to our Zoom room. I hope that goes through correctly. Let's see. Oh, I think it doubled it. Let me just try that. So I think you should be able to, okay. So I put the link to the Zoom room right in this live, so that if you want to pop on and actually join us in this conversation rather than just watching, you're welcome. So one thing we did want to do in this first half hour was also go over for people that did not make January's meeting where we talked about vision boards and basic goal setting. We wanted to kind of do a recap before we started talking about whether your SMART goals are dumb. And so the big thing that came out of the vision board exercise is the importance of attaching emotions to the goals that you want to achieve. And the reason this is so important is it's so easy just to blow off something and say, I should, it's a good idea. Someone recommended that I do something. But if you don't buy into it from your heart, there are always going to be those excuses and those easy outs for why you don't do it. But when you can make that emotional connection, that's when a goal will actually have power, and it will have meaning, and it will become that priority in your life. Because especially if it's a goal that you're going towards, something that you're really excited about, because then you just, I mean, even just as I'm thinking about it, I'm moving forward, I have that energy. And sometimes when we're just complacent about it, it's like, my doctor says I should lose 50 pounds. Who cares? Where's the candy bar? But when you can really have that passion that goes with it, that emotional connection, that's really where all of the power comes from. What did you say, MJ?
I would say that that's really true. It really, really, really resonates with me. For those of you who follow the Presence of Mind site, I was on this morning live looking a little haggard with my hair up and no makeup on, which is a place that most people do not see me. I was still in my yoga clothes. I had this epiphany, and it's been coming, but I had this epiphany. It was not a goal I wanted to set, although health and my wellness has been sort of churning for a while now. And I finally figured out my whys and figured out my feels. And really what it is I turned 50 this year. Woohoo! I've turned 50 this year in the middle of a pandemic.
Youngster.
And with turning 50, I decided, you know what? I don't want to turn 60 not being strong. And it really was about not wanting to turn 60 and having issues. My mother was about 62 when she had her first joint replacement. And that is a joint replacements of, I bet she's closing in on a dozen joint replacements now. She's had everything from thumb joints to the ball of her foot joint to the instep and knees and hips and elbows. And I got to tell you, like all of a sudden it became very real for me. I am 50. Now, 50 is not old, and 50 is the new 40. And I truly believe that. And I quite frankly believe that I'm 25. But the reality is, my bones are telling me a different story. And so for me, it was about setting a goal that motivated me because I had a why and I had a feel. And it was more than just, you know, the numbers on the charts for BMI and proper weight all said that I should be 100 pounds less. It's not about that. Weight, quite frankly, is not part of it. Eating differently is not part of it, although I did do protein shake today. But I followed that up with pasta tonight. Just gonna say, like, that's where I am. This is about me getting strong. Now, is it likely that something different's gonna come about with that? Absolutely, it's likely that as I feel stronger, as I get more fit, as when I'm doing yoga, it feels different to have tightened up some muscles or to have lengthened some muscles and some tendons, I will start making different choices, but that's not the goal today. The goal is because I'm motivated by wanting to not have surgeries in the future. And I want to be strong for my grandchildren. And I can't do that sitting and doing the things that I do all the time. So it became different. I would love if anybody is out there listening. It looks like we've got 3 people who are watching us. So if you're here, you know, jump on, make a comment, let us know who's here with us, and you can tell us your own stories as to why some of the goals that you're looking at have feels, and quite frankly, some of them don't have any feels to them. And those are the places that we're going to evaluate. That's what tonight's about, is like, are they goals? Are they accomplishments that you want to achieve? Why? And you're going to hear Donna and I both say several times throughout tonight, what's your whys? What's your feels? What added value does this bring to your life? So we have Amanda who's watching with us. Hi, Amanda.
Hi, Amanda.
Nice to have you here. We feel blessed. If there's any questions that you guys have, this is your time. This is what tonight is all about, is giving some space to answering some questions.
And if you want to join us on the Zoom call, you can keep your camera off. So you can join us and we could just hear your questions and have a conversation with you if you're comfortable with that and don't want to be on camera.
Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah, so one of the other things we talked about in January, MJ gave us the exercise of looking at the wheel of life. And it's looking at, I think there were 10 or 12 different aspects or areas of your life. Do you remember how many categories there are?
10. There's 10 categories on the wheel.
So there's 10. So it covers things like your financial well-being, your relationships, your mental health, and your emotional healing aspects.
Yeah. Partnership, relationships.
Your career. And so all of these different facets. And if you were to put it on like a circle graph, then you decide where you are satisfied in those categories. And so if it's an area that you're really not satisfied, you know, that point's going to go way in. And if you're really happy with your relationships, you know, that one comes out. And you can start to see where there are the imbalances. And they use the wheel analogy, I think, because if you picture it turning and then you have that flat spot, it's like ba-bump. And that's your ba-bump in the road.
Yep.
And you can decide if that's an area you want to improve. And the important thing when looking at this wheel of life exercise is to also consider not just how it rates, but how important that area is to you. For instance, some people have jobs. They have never really wanted a career. They don't have that higher calling for a vocation. They just want a job that pays the bills. And if that need is set, even though they could look at their job and say, you know, I really would like to have a more fulfilling, satisfying job, or my boss is a jerk, and their job rates, say, a 3 or a 4 on a scale of 10 because there's some stresses and struggles within that job, you can honestly evaluate it and say, it's a 3, but I don't really care. And then you don't have to worry about that. And you can release the sense of pressure of people saying, you hate your job so much, you really should find another job. That's something we're going to talk about today with goals.
So
Sometimes, huh?
I was just going to say that is such a very, very true, a true analogy of the wheel of life. I'm here. I'm sorry. I'm switching over. I didn't realize that the battery on my iPad, which I was monitoring Facebook with, just died on me. So I'm switching over so that I can monitor the comments. And Joan Warren is on here with us, and Joan's a life coach that I actually have known Joan for a number of years. And she just said that she uses the wheel of life in coaching too. And it's a great tool for us to be able to sort of flesh out where are those places where people are going to want to focus. Either you're going to pick those low-hanging fruit that is going to give you like the greatest satisfaction. You're going to take your 8 in the relationship sector up to the 10, or you're going to really dive deep into the lower ones, the 2s, the 3s, the 4s, where you're having those bumps in the road. And it's just such a great tool to kind of flesh out that information. And so it's why I started with that last month was, like really look at that and examine that. So yeah, it's a good part of it. So
yeah, and the point I was starting to make is you can look at it, and just because something is rated low doesn't mean it's something you feel the emotions that you want to change it. There are some low rated categories that are not important to you. So there's no need to put the time and the energy into bringing that grade up. There are other things you want to do. This is where the emotions come in. If you have no real emotional tie to one of these aspects of your life, for many years, my spiritual side would have been very low. I didn't care, wasn't important to me. So when we're looking at this wheel of life, it's important to tap into who you are and what matters to you. Someone else could look at me and say, well, Donna, you really need to work on that spiritual aspect of you, get back to your religious roots and all of this because you'll feel more fulfilled. Well, someone else telling me I'm going to feel fulfilled doesn't mean that I will until I'm ready for it.
right.
Because all of these years later, my rating on my spiritual aspect is very high. It became important to me, and I made the choice to tap into that and address that and kind of correct that bump in my road. But it's all in our own good time. So be careful, and people may try to guide you or tell you, listen to it respectfully and say, okay, yep, I take that under advisement, but I'm going to work on this area.
Yeah, exactly. So Amanda has commented, and I'm not going to read it, but I'm not going to read it out loud. Anybody who wants to see it, it's in the comments. But Amanda, that's an amazing goal, and kudos to you for recognizing that there may be another path that you need to be taking. One of the things that we talked about in the first workshop was about the motivators for achieving our goals. And a lot of times, well, not a lot of times, all of the time, those motivators are you're either moving away from pain or you're moving towards pleasure. So when you're thinking about your goal and what's going to motivate you to stay within that goal, think about where you sit. Are you moving away from pain or are you moving towards pleasure? And where does that get you in the scope of your goals and your goal setting? The goal that you have, like Donna said, you're going to choose the goals that you want to, but there's a deeper connection for the whys and the feels of this in terms of you and where you are right now and today. And that, I think, is something that you need to consider. I don't know where you are in the process, but I think that when I know for myself, and I think from mine and Donna's conversation, she's going to concur with that, is that when we do something for somebody else or in relation to somebody else, we don't have a motivator there because we're not moving away from pain and we're not moving towards pleasure, whichever one of those that you sit in, that's going to motivate you personally. And so if that work hasn't been done and you haven't fleshed that out, and 4 months from now, you get to say maybe June 10th, and you pick up a drink. You're in a social gathering, it's summertime. Hey, the hard seltzers are out. You pick up a drink. How will you then feel? Because that's going to impact. Are you going to feel in such a way that you can't recover from that and pick back up? Because we do have ebbs and flows with our goals. I'm sorry, the dog's going crazy. Somebody
No,
just
I'm
closed
not
the door.
laughing about the topic, but I just heard Gracie in the background.
So I just kind of bring that to your Grace. That's enough. Grace, go lay down. Sorry about that, folks. My very spirited Springer has decided that she needs to be on tilt tonight and make sure that I am safe and sound. So to go back to Amanda, so as you're thinking about this, it looks, according to what you've written, it looks like it may be your desire to cope with stress, maybe what the real goal is to efficiently, effectively, in a more proactive way, deal with stress versus deal with not drinking. And so I guess I just put that out there for you to consider it, that I don't have the right or wrong answers for you and for your life, but I just want to put that out there and sort of give you that suggestion as another way to look at it. And feel free to add more if you'd like.
Well, not specifically in relation to that, because I'm not quite sure if this applies. But sometimes we have the two motivating factors of we're moving away from something or we're moving towards something. What frequently happens, and I'm going to use weight loss as the example, what frequently happens is your doctor or a situation in your life, or for me, it was hiking and feeling a lot of discomfort when I was hiking, so I lost weight. And then you reach the point where you're not quite at your goal, but you're not feeling the pain anymore. And that's when you need to find that transition place to what you're moving towards. So there can be this gap. And a lot of us, we will get to the gap and then we just kind of stop. And sometimes that's okay. If there's no real emotional reason to find the pleasure and to experience the pleasure of continuing, it's okay to let yourself stop there. If we're using weight loss as an example, if you've lost 30 pounds and you wanted to lose 50, but you've lost 30, you feel good, you look good, you have a lot more energy, you're able to get down on the floor with your children or your grandchildren or chase the dog, and life is feeling really good, that could be the place where you're ready to stop. And it's okay to allow yourself to stop there instead of beating yourself up and saying, because how many times do we hear the last 10 pounds, those are the hardest to lose. And that becomes pain and suffering, losing those last 10 pains. That's not moving towards joy. That's just wallowing in the pain and the suffering. But like I just said, if you're feeling good and you've got energy and you're exercising more and you just feel great, allow yourself to say, this is good enough.
Right.
And remove that pressure of going farther until that time, and maybe it never happens, but until that time where there's something you're moving towards that will bring you pleasure. So I think that's one of the challenges we have. We set goals that are, written in stone, and we say we have to get there. That's something we're going to be talking about tonight. And we lose all interest in the goal, but we still feel like we have to hold on to it. And we're going to encourage you to challenge your thinking on that, and sometimes just allow yourself to rethink and revisit what the actual goal is, that emotional feeling you want to feel. Is it better and more healthy and just feels better to have lost 30 pounds and be excited, or to struggle to lose 50 pounds and think that was hell? What's the better experience? Yeah. What are the emotions you want to attach to that weight loss experience?
Yeah, I couldn't concur with that anymore. It really is, it really is a very freeing place to be when you sort of start to shift that mindset. And let's face it, that's some of what we're talking about, is shifting mindset. And when we set goals for ourselves and we start to work towards those, and we have those waning moments where we go back to what we did before, because that's the comfort spot, right? I mean, you know, I'll take myself for example. I always feel great when I have an active, more active life, but it's really easy for me to go back to a sedentary life because that's what I'm comfortable with. That's how I grew up. That's how I lived. That's the internal dialogue. Like, oh, it's too much effort to go up to the trail and then to walk 3 miles and then walk 3 miles back. That's the internal dialogue that happens, right? You know, we set ourselves up for that, and we don't sort of give ourselves permission because we look at our goals as a black and white linear process. And that's what we're going to challenge tonight, is, does it need to be that way? And then of course, for the guys that are going to jump in and be a part of this tonight, there's also the whole subject of masculine versus feminine energy and what that looks like. So Donna's going to take us through some great topic on that. And it has come up more and more and more and more in the last week since we started talking about this. It's not men versus women. It is masculine in conjunction with feminine energy, and how we sort of respond to that, and what we do to allow ourselves permission. For anybody who knows me, you know that I dislike the word empower, because I don't think that any one of us can empower somebody else. I don't give you power. You give yourself power.
That's one of my pet peeves with coaches. And I saw a Facebook ad today that said, I will empower you. It's like, you can't empower someone else. This is something we give to ourselves. We claim for ourselves.
Yep. And
if
so
I have to give it to you, you don't have it.
Exactly. And that's what tonight is about for me, is about people taking their own power and not looking for outside validation, no matter what that means. And I am a strong proponent of the one thing that the pandemic has really done for me is given me an opportunity to really set back on my laurels and go, where am I headed, and what permission do I need to give myself to shift gears and to change my course of action? And I think that that's what it's all about. And empowerment gives me the connotation that someone else is better than or knows more than I do, because they're going to bestow their powers on me. So it's my little tangent rhetoric, I guess.
And well, and the thing, when we give our power away that way, we let someone else make the decisions for us, then we are no longer responsible for the outcomes. So to
Very
fully
true.
be empowered to take that on yourself, you're saying, I think it was Hal Elrod that said, the moment you accept responsibility for everything in your life is the moment you can change anything in your life, because you're no longer waiting for someone else to do it for you.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, you have to accept and face it. Okay, if things stay the same, that's on me.
Yep, very true. So I want to do a shout out here that Joan, I mentioned that Joan Warren is on here. Joan, I'm reading your comment that you're here, you're 68 and you're in better shape than you were in your 40s. I would have to agree with that. I've known you for a number of years. I don't know if I must know you for probably 20 years now. I don't know when John was up to your house, but it has to be going on 20 years, I would think. And yeah, I can see that. I can see that you're probably a lot less stressed and take life in a bit of a different stride than you would have 20 years ago. So yeah, it feels pretty freeing. And I think that that's what turning 50 did for me this year, was like, wow, I have to actually really start getting serious and thinking about what the future has in store. And one of the things that this past year My husband has some health issues, and I have really had to face independence and what independence is going to look like when he's no longer here. And a lot of that has had to do with the fact that I need to be strong, and I need to be, and I mean physically strong. I need to be physically strong to do the things that I've always relied on him for. So this is, I don't know, it was just like this big epiphany for me that this is where I need to be. So Joan also says there needs to be a balance between feminine, masculine energy. My last career, I was more inclined to overuse my masculine energy. So true. So
Yeah.
true. I can see that as well. And the balance, there really does have to be a balance. And I think there has to be a balance for males as well as for females. Like it's not our gender or their gender, it is collective gender that has to find that balance, and it is okay. And I do think that our younger generation, I look at my youngest son, Nick, who will probably jump on here pretty soon, and I find him to have a pretty decent balance of male and female energy. And I think that younger generation tends to. I think that they have been raised in such a way, in such a culture that's a little bit different than the cultures of other generations. I just think that that's kind of where we are. I think when I think of race relations, and I know it's very volatile right now, but it does seem to me that the younger generations are in a place where they're more accepting than we ever grew up with. And so I think I have hope that that conversation is is doing what it's meant to do. So so yes, definitely the balance between male and female energy is important.
You have Gracie, I have Ocarina. She found the plastic bags that she loves to.
You couldn't
on.
hear it, but I knew she was doing something behind you.
Oh.
It's a good thing that when we put this out here, it was grab a cup of coffee, grab a cup of tea, grab some wine. You notice I have my tea. I will shout out to Southern New Hampshire University, my alma mater. This used to say alumni in the center of it, but years in the dishwasher and it's come out. But yeah, I've got my cup of tea. And
Did you see did you see that meme about drinking tea on Zoom calls?
no.
So here's the tip. Blow over your glass, your wine that's in a coffee mug, so that people will think your tea is too hot to drink, but you have wine in it.
No, I really have chamomile honey tea. I'm making small changes in my life, but one of them was to stop drinking coffee at 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night. So this is, night number 2 of not doing that, but it's a different lifestyle, let me tell you. All right, so we are just about 7 o'clock. We're gonna stay right here. We're going to give it another minute. If there's any last questions that anybody has, and I really encourage people to jump in with questions, jump in with commentary. That's what this is about. Yeah, we have sort of an outline of what we're doing, and Donna and I have gone through the materials, and we feel very comfortable talking for the next hour and a half, but it's much more fun. And it's much more informative if you guys are participating and jumping in, and your commentary is well received. And we love having that. It's different perspectives. Excuse me, we are not the gurus of it. I did not become Buddha of goal setting last night. So everybody has something to bring.
Exactly.
All right, so we are exactly 7 o'clock. So I want to, for those people who jump in now or jump onto Zoom, which we may have, I just want to welcome you here. Welcome everybody to this workshop on
Are your SMART goals dumb?
Are you? I think Joan just commented that if I have to hide the wine, then I probably have a problem. Are your SMART goals dumb? So what exactly does that mean? So Donna's going to lead us through this workshop. I just really want to to welcome everybody. It just warms my heart to take what could have been a really, really difficult, and was a really difficult time with the pandemic, closing the physical location, being closed from essentially March to September, almost to October, reopening in a new location, which was completely different before because it actually happens to be at my home. And then trying to figure out how the workshops that we have done or had started to do with different topics and varying topics and the groups that we were working with, how we could bring that back to life and breathe some life into it. And I love to do in-person workshops. It's a wonder. Joan actually has done several. She's done a manifesting, visioning workshop herself at my old location. And there's so much energy and it's just a really fun time. So how do you breathe energy back into that in a time when we don't gather? And if we do gather, our faces are masked. And so how do we read the body language and stuff? So this is what Donna and I came to, and I'm really happy with the way that things are going. I'm happy with the results that we've had and what I feel like is the help. I'm going to talk a moment about the last workshop that we did. My son and daughter-in-law were both onto it, and they were in separate rooms doing it, and were setting their own goals, but knowing that as partners and as husband and wife for a year and a half, that their goals overlapped in some way. So even what they had for personal goals was going to affect their partner. And first of all, I was so impressed with the fact that that's the way that their thought process was. But I was even more impressed as we sat here and did this workshop, and Nick, thought to do a Canva search and found a layout for a vision board that he did electronically, and he shared with all of us. It was just a cool, really good mom moment, as well as a facilitator moment. And what happened in the ensuing days was that Nick came to me because I kept pushing him. What's the whys? And this is the real moral of this story. What's the why? Why are you doing that? Go deeper. And I kept pushing him to go deeper and go deeper. And all of a sudden, about 2 days later, Nick calls me and he says, Mom, I want to live my life in a more mindful way. That's where I came to. That's my goal. And I went, yes. Everything else that you've done is a way to get to a goal, but everything you've been talking about is really how you want to live your life with more mindfulness and more intention. Yes, that is it. And that's what he's been working on. And that's what they worked on together. And were able to have a conversation about some things that they really just assumed that they were on the same page about. And not that they were on a different page, but they might have been on a different paragraph than the other one. And now they've been able to have that conversation. So they're in a stronger place to work towards the goals that they have. It's been very, if I do nothing else with this, I can tell you that it just to see those kind of results, whether it's my kid or it's a client, is well worth it. So that's why we're doing this. That's why this has become really important. So Donna Doyen is my counterpart. She is one half of Presence of Mind. She does all of the back end, behind the scenes stuff to keep us up and running and going. And she's also an amazing facilitator, tarot and oracle card reader. So Donna, I'm going to turn it over to you, hon.
All righty. Well, welcome everyone. And today we are going to be talking about, are your SMART goals dumb? Now, before we get into that, I just want to share my own story, which is I always lived in kind of that masculine energy as far as my work, as far as my goals, as far as my life. I was very logic centered. Really didn't have a wasn't really in touch with my feelings at that point. And I loved SMART goals. And a couple of years ago, I started creating some wellness-based courses on healthier habits and how to lose weight and different things. And one of them I was working on was a goal setting workshop because I love setting goals. I mean, goals is how I have earned a couple of degrees. I've earned professional designations. I've trained for half marathons and triathlons. I've hiked sections of the Appalachian Trail, including a 100-mile section that I did over a 2-week period. I love goals because I love the person I have to become in order to achieve them. But when I was working on this goal setting course, and it was called It's Your Turn, It's Your Time, because so many of us women, while we're raising our children and our families and we're having careers, we lose track of who we are and what we want as individuals. Not as mom, not as sister, not as wife, not as daughter, not as employee, but as who we are. And so I was working on this course and I got stuck because even though I had lived by the SMART goals principles of specific, measurable, action-based, realistic, and time-based, I wasn't feeling it. I didn't have that connection. Ironically, it was an emotional connection I didn't have with these SMART goals. So I started thinking about it and just couldn't figure out why SMART goals didn't work for me anymore. And then I made the realization that, well, sometimes SMART goals are just dumb. And so that's what we're going to get into. So it was that transition period of, why do I have to do it this way when I really want to do it this way? So I am going to share my screen because I created a slide presentation to help us get through these ideas a little bit. I think it's this one. Let's see. Are you getting my screen? Oh, I lost my screen.
I have to unmute myself. I can see your screen beautifully. What are
Okay.
we seeing? And we're seeing it on Facebook, yes.
And you're seeing it on Facebook. Okay, good.
And I want to say thank you. I want to say hello to Sarah, who is watching. I think she's
Sarah.
still watching.
Okay, so we're going to talk about, are your SMART goals dumb? And so this is what we're going to go over tonight is, what are SMART goals? What makes some SMART goals dumb? What makes some SMART goals dumb? We'll talk a little bit, like MJ was talking earlier, about the masculine energy of SMART goals. We're going to talk about resisting and resenting that masculine energy, which is what I was just talking about just a minute ago, finding that place where they don't work for us any longer. And then I'm going to introduce you to a feminine approach to SMART goals. Again, not girl, boy, man, woman, but the energy part of it. And then we're going to talk about the feminine energy of SMART goals, what that means. And then we'll talk about blending the masculine and feminine together. So SMART goals. SMART goals are specific, measurable, action-oriented, realistic, and time-bound. Hoo-ah, we're gonna get stuff done. That's what SMART goals are all about. As I did a little bit of research, SMART goals actually came into being, according to Wikipedia, the first time anyone mentioned the acrostic, I think is what it's called, for SMART, as in SMART goals, was back in 1981. And I'm going to look at my notes here. It was November of 1981, an issue of Management Review. A man named George T. Doran wrote a paper titled, "There's a Smart Way to Write Management's Goals and Objectives." So I graduated high school in 1981. Yes, 40 years of high school graduation. So hard to believe it's been that long. But I graduated high school in 1981. This article was presented in November of 1981. Is it any wonder that a few years later, when I entered the workforce, that SMART goals were all the rage? Everyone was using SMART goals as a way to get crap done. So this is a picture of me. I ran a half marathon in 2018. I also did it in 2017. And I used SMART goals to set it up because it was specific. I knew what I needed to run for a distance. I knew when it was taking place. I knew where it was taking place. I knew I had to create a training plan to get it done. I knew that there was a time restriction on being able to get this all done. So it was a very SMART goal in that sense. So that's what a SMART goal is all about. But sometimes SMART goals are dumb. And a dumb goal is one that's dependent upon specific events or someone else. As an example, if my boyfriend at the time, or he's still my significant other, if Earl had wanted to run a half marathon and he said, Donna, let's run a half marathon together. And I said, well, I really don't want to do a half marathon, but okay, I'll do a half marathon as long as you run it with me. And then he doesn't want to run it. But I've got this idea in my head, yeah, I've bought into this. I really want to do this half marathon now. But if I'm waiting for him and he's not willing to do it, what does that do for my incentive, my emotional connection to the goal? So if I'm counting on someone else to do it with me, or if they have a specific task they're going to do to support it, and there's no other option, it may be dumb. Another example of this is a specific event that, you hear people say, when I win the lottery, this is what I'm going to do with all of that money. Well, you can't do those things unless you win the lottery. So those types of goals may be dreams, but they're really not a SMART goal. Another way that a goal can be dumb is if you're unwilling or unable to do what it takes. When I've worked with people on their goal setting and they have young children at home and they say, well, Donna, it's great that you could train for a triathlon, but you don't have children at home. When I had children at home, I wouldn't have been able to train for a half marathon either. I wouldn't have been willing to do what it takes. And so when that happens, and if you're honest with yourself and you say, I'm not willing to do what it takes, allow that honesty into your life and say, this isn't a goal for this time in my life, maybe later. One of my goals it was one of my dreams from when I was a teenager. I wanted to jump out of a perfectly good airplane. And skydiving was a dream that I had probably since I was an early teenager. And when I got married, I still had this dream. And my husband at the time, he said, this is okay if you want to do it. And I really didn't have the courage to do it. Really wanted to do it, but didn't have the guts. And then when we had children, I talked about it one time and he pulled me aside and he said, honey, would you promise me that you won't jump out of an airplane until after the kids are grown? And I thought, well, why? What difference does that make? And he said, because if something happens, I know it's not likely to happen, but if something were to happen, I don't know that I could raise the children without you. And so when he asked that question, I became unwilling to try to reach that goal while my children were still young. I was unwilling. Doesn't mean the goal has to go away forever. It's just not the right time for it. And allowing that and admitting that instead of saying, yeah, next year. No, when the kids are grown, I can do this. So think about whether you're willing to do what it takes in this moment, or if it's something for a later time. M, from motivation ebbs and flows. These are those goals that come and go. They're really dreams. These are the ones like you have a class reunion coming up. I told you 40 years. Oh, I would love to lose 25 pounds before my class reunion. While you're in that moment and you're thinking about the result, but you don't really have the interest or the motivation or that emotional connection to that goal. Your motivation ebbs and flows. There are the good days, the bad days. You're not willing to change anything about who you are or how you're approaching what you want for the result. That can make a SMART goal dumb. And then the final one is the letter B. If it belongs to someone else, and I caught myself when I first started this and I was talking about the half marathon, if Earl had wanted to run it and I said yes, and that goal belongs to him, that belongs to someone else. And sometimes we can buy into it fully and it becomes our own goal, but a lot of times it doesn't. And if the goal actually belongs to someone else and you're interested in supporting them, and this actually would apply as MJ was talking earlier about Nick and Danny, his wife, they each have their individual goals, but then they have goals as a couple, and they have the opportunity to support each other's goals. You don't have to own the goal and claim it for your own to have that emotional connection to it, to the goal. But if you have the emotional connection to the other person and you want to support them and be part of their experience, that's very different, because then you're owning and claiming the experience with your partner or with your friend. That becomes the goal for you, while hiking Mount Kilimanjaro, that's still the goal for that person. So that's what can make some SMART goals dumb, if they're dependent upon others, if you're unwilling to do what it takes to achieve it, if your motivation is just ebbing and flowing, it's kind of all over the place, or if the goal belongs to someone else. So I am going to stop my share for a minute. So MJ, any thoughts, or do you want to chime in on that at all?
I was actually really surprised to hear the time frame of this, that it is back in 1981. And I was just sitting here as you were going through this, thinking about 1981 and what it was that we were experiencing in 1981. And I was going into middle school in 1981. But I remember my mom's friends, women, talking about, sexual harassment was still a huge thing that was being played, particularly in a masculine world, in the corporate world. I was hearing things like glass ceiling. I was hearing topics like women can't do that job. I can distinctly remember my mom, I would say 1981, 1982, going past a road construction crew and there being a woman flagging, and how horrified my mother was that was the case, because that was not our culture at that time. And so I guess that's in this next part that you're going to talk about with the feminine and masculine, is that SMART goals were really developed, number one, in a very masculine world. And number two, they were developed in a very corporate world. So when I entered the corporate world in 1988, it was still very much that corporate, like, this is the corporate structure. I actually entered the workforce in 1986, and I went to work for a bank. And I've told this story several times recently for some reason. And I remember being given my orientation as a woman, as a female, as a bank teller in a bank in small town Kennebunk, Maine, was a 4-day training on how to dress appropriately to work at the bank. The men didn't have that. The guys that were coming to work did not have that, but I had that because I was a woman. And so even the goals, the corporate goals that were created, were in a very masculine light and very sanitized. I guess that's what comes to mind. And so I guess I kind of want to just put that out there into perspective as to what we experience today, although we're not where we're going to end up and we're not where we want to be. We are in a culture that is far different than it was in 1981. And yet we're still oftentimes using a process that was very masculine and very corporate for our very personal agendas and goals.
Yeah.
And I think that I just want to highlight that and put that into, just say those words and put it into perspective as we go into the next section of this. It just feels like there's a good lead up to that. I feel like I'm playing the tuba here with the deep bass going bum 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 in the movie. So anyways.
Well, the thing that always amazed me was in all of the corporate and manufacturing jobs that I've held over the years, you're still using SMART goals as one of the primary models.
Definitely.
And
definitely.
It is so black and white,
mm-hmm.
and it is written in stone, and it's not even really considered a guideline. It is the process.
Yes.
And you do it this way. And as I said at the beginning, when I turned around 50, I started thinking, but I don't want to play that game anymore.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
50 really, my friends always told me it was the magic number for when you really come into your own. And I know for me personally, it really has been. It's been that red hat, purple flower thing, you know.
Yeah, the Red Hat Club. So Joan just jumped in and said, as teachers, we fought really hard to get to wear pantsuits to work. And I can remember those days where that would have been like a real big no-no. So it just was culturally, we were just in a very different place. And it astounds me that we've held on to something like SMART goals as being the pinnacle of how we do things, particularly in our personal lives. And I think
Well, the thing is, because it works and it gets things done.
it does. It
If-
does.
If we're going to go into this in just a minute, if that is the focus and the intent is to get things done, it works.
Yes. And yes,
But
that is very
sometimes
true.
there's more to life than getting stuff done.
Yes. More to life than getting stuff done. And there is different ways that we view that, and different ways that we think about that. So with that said, I'm going to let you continue.
All right, I'm going to share my screen again.
And Joan, I'm just going to say, thank goodness that you guys don't have to still wear skirts to be in the classroom. Can you imagine?
I know.
Can you? I can't even imagine. You had to have stockings on, pumps, and a mask. Like
Now,
there
there's
would
a
be-
little bit of heaven on earth.
I would be definitely sitting here going, pay teachers 5 times what their
Yeah,
salaries are.
Yeah,
You
they
guys
deserve
deserve
it.
more money than you get now, but that would definitely take the cake.
All righty. So let's talk about the masculine energy of SMART goals. For me, it's always been with these types of SMART goals, the goal is to reach the destination. The destination is what matters. So they're very action-based. You're being very logical. You're making decisions and you're taking actions. It's so focused and you're impatient to get results. It's an all or nothing mentality. Frequently, when you hear about the differences between men and women, we hear men, stereotypically speaking, can compartmentalize their different aspects of their life. They're at work, they're focused on work, they're not thinking about family. They are at home and they're home. Sometimes they're thinking about work. But they're at a sports game and they're all into the sports game that they're playing or whatever, where women are more multitasking and focused on, while they're at work, they're thinking about home and they're thinking about their parents, they're thinking about what's going on in their church or their community or what's happening for gossip on Facebook. And women kind of can be all over there, but the SMART goals, that energy, it's just you're focused on the destination. That's what's most important. So what I ran into was that I was resisting and resenting all of that masculine energy because I started thinking, well, what if the destination isn't what matters most? What if I want to take some side trips along the way? I do hiking most weekends. So the destination is the summit of a mountain. But what if I want to take the side path that goes to a viewpoint or a waterfall? If I'm focused on the destination, I want to stay on that straight and narrow path or that twisty, windy, rocky, muddy path to get to the summit. And I can miss out on the waterfalls, the scenic views, or even just an interesting tree or clump of mushrooms that I see. And so I really was resisting and resenting that a SMART goal forced me to lose track of everything else and just stay focused, boom, 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 milestone, 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 without having that chance to stop and breathe, to smell those figurative and literal roses, right? So suddenly it just became complicated for me because I was battling what was a tried and true, something I believed in. And I was starting to wonder, is there another way? Something that wasn't quite so demanding, didn't seem so serious or so hard, something that allowed me to just relax a little bit into the experience of the goals. So MJ, anything to add to how we might be resisting or resenting the masculine energy?
Boy, I can't really think of anything. I mean, this whole thing brings to mind how many differences that my husband and I have had. We planned a trip that we're not able to take, unfortunately, but we hope to this fall. But when we were talking about it, it's like a 10,000-mile cross country track. And it was so much for him, it was so much about we were going to go from point A to point B. And for me, it was, well, wait a second. What if I want to go to, point X before I get to point B? It's so okay to do that. And so it just really highlighted how sort of different our energies were around where we were going. Like I was leaving space for us to do some like side trip or to take 20 miles off and go see the biggest ball of yarn. Like I'm okay with that.
So I'm laughing here because today in the mail, we got an atlas or a gazetteer for Montana. Because MJ, I don't think you know this, but sometime May or June, I'll be taking 2 weeks to go to Montana to pick up the camper for Earl's truck. And so we got this map and we started talking about, so how are we going to get there? And it's like 2,400 miles. And Earl says, we can do that in 2 days. And I'm thinking, wait, what? He wants to get there. And then he's looking at the map and he's looking at, the map of the US on the back. And he said, hey, do you want to go down and see Salt Lake City? Maybe go to Vegas? And I'm like, wait, what? I'm thinking, 3 or 4 days to get to Montana, pick up the camper and spend, 2 or 3 days in Montana and then, having 3 or 4 or 5 days to drive home to Maine. And he's like, no, we can, bing, bing, we can be here. It's like, do you realize how much driving that is? We are going to be driving the whole time.
Right.
But he's just thinking point. And it's like, but what's here?
It's so true. We just, depending on where we are, and it fluctuates because most people would say that I have a very masculine energy to me, go into things very headstrong and sort of trudge my way through it. And yet in matters like this, I think what it highlights for me is that we need to, as people looking at our goals and looking at where we want to get in life, what is important. And so I do think that what we're leading up to here is this balance between the two energy fields and how we can support both sides of our energies in order to attain things and feel good while we're doing it. So when it comes to the female energy, just allowing that space, because we need space. We're that's who we are. We're I look at it in lots of ways. Even our form, it's, we're roomier through the hips. We need some space, and it needs to be allow for some curves, I guess is how I'm going to put it. So
great way. Some curves in the road. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. All righty. So it occurred to me that to ask, was there another way to approach goal setting? And now I just want to take a minute to read from an essay that I had written for a website. And this part, the title of the article was The Feminine Approach to SMART Goals. And I didn't have time to memorize this and stuff, so I'm just going to read it to you. As the years passed, I continued to set and achieve goals like losing 50 pounds so I could hike the 100-mile wilderness section of the Appalachian Trail over a period of 2 weeks without dying. I realized that the gold standard of goal setting wasn't the only way to set and achieve goals. But still, I was attached to the idea of SMART goals. And although the quality was undeniable, as was the fact that I once wore them like a well-fitted business suit, I had to ask myself, do SMART goals spark joy? The answer was a sad but indisputable no. But I didn't have the heart to toss out the once favorite outfit, even though the style no longer suited me. So I let it hang in my closet, unworn for years. And then one day I pulled it out to take another look. I thought, fingering the fabric. I wonder. It's simple in its styling, I thought, laying it on my bed. And there's no question that it's meant a lot to me over the years. So many goals achieved, so many memories created because of this suit. I cringed looking at the ridiculously massive 1980s shoulder pads that could protect any NFL football player. Maybe I could alter this suit to be more modern, a more life-appropriate style. I picked up the suit jacket and I hugged it to my chest. Yes, I think it is worth saving. I can find a way to make it a useful part of my wardrobe again. So instead of throwing it out, I altered SMART goals to suit my modern needs. You might say I added a few feminine frills to them. So this is what I came up with. The feminine approach to SMART goals. They're simple. Sometimes they can be somewhat vague. We just have this sense of what we want, and that's okay. They don't have to be so specific. They can be meaningful or memorable. Instead of being something that you can measure, one of my greatest frustrations in later years with SMART goals was that, how are you going to measure it? How will you know if you've achieved this? And it makes sense. But still, what if what I want to create is the experience, something that's a great memory to be able to tell someone? When I trained for my first triathlon, it wasn't because I had ever been particularly athletic. I was never athletic. I wanted to see if I could do it. And then I wanted bragging rights to say that I had done it, because no one looking at me would ever say, oh, there's someone that could do a triathlon. No. But sometimes we set goals because we just feel inside our heart like challenging ourselves. And so we just put forth that effort. And it's something that just means something to us. Doesn't have to mean anything to anyone else, but just so we can say that we did it. These types of SMART goals, the feminine SMART goals, they're acceptable to us. That means that we're willing to do what it takes. It may be small steps. It may be walking 5 minutes a day while we start to learn how to become more physically active. And we're okay with that. We're not saying that we have to immediately jump out and be able to walk 2 miles in 10 minutes. No, we're saying, I'm okay allowing it to take time. And I'm willing to do what it takes. I'm willing to set boundaries and say, you know what? The family's on their own for dinner tonight because I'm going to go to this book club or this meeting of women. I'm thinking of Women in Wellness Wednesdays. One night a month, I'm giving that to myself. And I'm going to do what it takes to make it happen. Feminine SMART goals, they resonate with us. There's just this heart calling telling us to do it. Whether it's losing weight, starting a yoga program, whether it's setting aside and becoming more proficient with your finances and starting to put more money aside and paying off your debts. It's just something that has meaning to you. And then it's timeless. This is one of those greatest gifts. This is the jumping out of an airplane. The goal that you set when you were a teenager and said, wow, I want to do that. And then you're a 20-something-year-old with young children and your husband says, please don't ever do that while the children are still young. And you put that goal on hold. And then when you're 48 or 49 years old, I don't remember how old I was, I jumped out of an airplane. There was no time limit on achieving that. And it's when we put those restrictions on and say we have to have it done by a certain time. Weight loss comes to mind. We have to lose weight. I want to lose 50 pounds in 6 months. So what if you've only lost 40 pounds in 6 months? Does that take away the power of what you've done for yourself? I hope not. When we allow our goals to be timeless, we allow ourselves to take 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And we say, it's okay, I'm making progress. So that's what SMART goals, feminine SMART goals are. They're simple, they're meaningful or memorable, they're acceptable to us, and they resonate with us. And we don't put a time limit on them. We just allow it to go, which goes right into the energy of the feminine goals. To someone looking, from someone looking outside, looking in, they may say, well, it doesn't look very well defined, it looks kind of fuzzy, vague. That's okay. the feminine energy, it allows time for, in the space and the energy for the other commitments and responsibilities we have in our lives. This is the ebb and the flow of our time and our energy, not our motivation. If we don't have the motivation to stick with it, then it can become a dumb goal. This is saying we have it in our heart. We trust that it's going to happen. We know that it will happen in time. And that's the ebb and flow that's here. We don't feel the pressure to perform. We don't feel the pressure to give up other resources when we feel in that moment that they need to go somewhere else, because we're compassionate to the other areas of our lives. And we don't compartmentalize, we just see the big picture. And so we are able to say, okay, so the 10 minutes or the 30 minutes I wanted to exercise here, okay, today for this occasion, I'm going to give it over here, perhaps a visit with your mom or your children or something. And it's being careful, though, not to always give to someone else, but it's having that acceptable part that you're willing to say no sometimes so that you can say yes to yourself.
So
And
Donna, I'm gonna
Sure.
jump in real quick on that. So one of the things that I often get when I am coaching somebody is, well, I feel guilty of not doing that. And so then the person ends up feeling like the whole weight is sitting on their shoulders, because the weight of my time, what do we hear more often? You can give yourself at least 1 hour a day. I saw a meme this morning that said that very same thing. Yes, today I can. Tomorrow, maybe not.
Yeah.
It depends on lots and lots of factors. And I think that that's one of the things that we miss, is the fact that we have to be realistic in the ebb and flow of our lives. And I know for myself that if the laundry is piling up and the bed needs to be changed and the floor needs to be vacuumed, and I need to take an hour and a half and do those things, that the pressure from not doing those things is not going to be better by me taking an hour walk.
And here's what I add to that. When we change the way we think about those tasks, they can become part of our self-care.
Yes,
And they
absolutely.
can become that part of our time for ourselves.
Yes.
Because instead of looking at those as chores that have to get done, and I hate having, and I resent doing them because I would rather be doing this, when we can flip our switch about what we're thinking about those tasks, it can make all the difference in the world. I am one of those rare, weird, very weird people that enjoys doing laundry, all the way from the sorting to the putting in the washer, switching it to the dryer to the folding. Love the folding part. I know, I'm weird. Will you still be my friend, MJ?
I will.
Okay.
You can come do my laundry anytime.
You notice I folded like the cleaning cloths, and
I know. It's great.
well, that's something that I happen to really enjoy. I didn't always enjoy it, but it was one of those things that when my children were small, I found it was a time where I could have those few moments to myself, because when I said I need to fold clothes and they started to bother me, here, help, they found something else to do. And so that became a safe, comfortable, sacred place for me and time for me. And it was restoring order from chaos, which is part of my nature. So when we can find a way to find the pleasure and the joy in doing those things, it can become such a part of our self-care that we don't feel like we're missing out on something because we're able to give it to ourselves in another way.
So true. Joan has commented that people think that they don't have a choice. And she also writes, sometimes I need extreme self-care. I think that is the one thing, particularly those of us who are coaches, I think that is the one message that we need to hit out of the ballpark time and time and time again, is you have a choice, and that is your power. And so when I talk about empowering and people taking their power back, it's their power to choose is really what it is. It's that mindset shift. And really, when we come down to it, that's really what we're talking about, is that mindset shift of, I have the power to choose. I can let the internal dialogue continue, or I can choose to stop that internal dialogue.
Yeah.
I would love for it to be as simplistic as that. It really, truly is that simplistic. It's harder to put into practice than that simplistic of a statement, but that's really how simple it is. And I think that is something that we have just really, really not explored enough, and we don't spend enough time sort of living in that choice, in that possibility of choice. And as far, yes, and without guilt, that is true. So there, Joan has said without guilt, there's two sides to that, is that I get to choose, and if I'm choosing in my authentic self, then I get to do that without guilt. And I think that takes us to the next level of, I get to live in my authentic self. It doesn't mean that I have a recipe or a license to be mean or unkind or disrespectful or any of the things that might occur with that, but I do get to set my boundaries, and I do get to say, this is where I am in this process. This is my choice. I'm going to live with the rewards of that. I'm going to live with the repercussions of that. And, sometimes we look at those and then we step back and we go, ooh, shouldn't have gone there, but that's okay. I made a choice, and now I'm going to choose to do something different. And as far as extreme self-care, look, Joan, I am the queen of wanting to have self-care. If I have a place that I go to up north, it's a bed and breakfast, and I got to tell you, there are two partners who own this, and because they know their guests so well, that when you make a reservation there, they know everything about you. And when I walk into this place, my name is on the door, my favorite wine is on the tub. If I happen to be going there because I'm going to a workshop that's in their facility, when I come out of that workshop, there is a bath drawn for me. There is candles lit. There's a glass of wine next to the tub. Like, they do this up. That is my extreme. Like, when I need to escape, that's where I go. And I'm okay doing that. And so I encourage people to do that as much as they can, as much as they want to, and as much as they feel like they need to, because I do think that we also we take bits and pieces. And I know for Donna, it's hiking. It's when she steps onto that trail and she goes, and she can just like leave everything else behind. I mean, we don't hike anymore without our cell phones, but that doesn't mean that your cell phone has to be on and on your person. My son, who's an avid hiker, his is in his backpack. That's their agreement. How the cell phone does not come out until they reach their destination, if they want to take pictures, but they don't answer phone calls. They don't answer texts. They have it for safety purpose. The end. They don't hike with their smartwatches, none of those things. So anyway, so that is my long-winded way to say choice.
It is choice. And the feminine approach to SMART goals is all about allowing for those choices and understanding that every day you're making different choices, and that's okay, because the focus doesn't have to be on the destination, on that goal. It can be on the journey. It's the experience of reaching the goal that matters most. It's that time to stop and smell the roses or pull off the highway to see the biggest ball of yarn. That's what's going to make it memorable to us. And that's what we want to experience. So the masculine approach is reaching the destination, and the feminine approach is just enjoying the journey to that destination. And so to blend the masculine and the feminine energies, where the goal is to both enjoy the journey as you're moving towards the destination as it is to reach the destination. And so to do this is you can have a flexible plan. So you have the destination where you want to go and you have a timeline, but we're driving to Montana this summer. So we could plan on 3 or 4 days to get out there rather than Earl's, 2.5 days. You allow for the time so you can pull off the highway and you can stop if you see a sign that says, oh, I'd like to go see that. I remember my mother, my mother, my aunt, and my cousin were taking a road trip. And we decided if we saw any street signs that we wanted to go see, we were going to go see it. And I think we were somewhere in Pennsylvania and we saw a sign for the Crayola Crayon Factory. And so we pulled off the highway to see it. Unfortunately, it was closed for the day, but that was fun. Just being able to say, yes, let's go see that. That was more important than getting however many miles we wanted for the day. So it's allowing yourself that flexibility. If you are a couple, a man and a woman couple who possess those types of energies, and you're trying to communicate about, for MJ and John and me and Earl, it's having that conversation before you leave of, yes, I understand you want this timeline, you want to get there, but let's enjoy the journey on the way, because otherwise I'm going to get crabby. I tell Earl that all the time. It's like, okay, we can do it your way, but I'm going to get crabby. Oh, okay, we can stop. And then another thing we can do is just evaluate our progress frequently as we're moving towards that destination. Sometimes we can have a great plan and it seems wonderful and it's working and it's flexible and it's fluid. And then you reach the point of, do I really want to do this? And you start to ask yourself, and just because you've set something as a goal doesn't mean you have to keep it as a goal. And it's allowing the release of that or modifying it along the way. That's another way that we can blend the masculine and the feminine. We can just do a pivot. And then we can release the pressure of achieving tomorrow's dreams today. Sometimes we say, oh, I want to do this. And we think that means it has to be now. And sometimes now is not the best time for it to happen. We may not have the resources. We may not have the time and the energy. There may be other things we want to do that are more important, higher priority. It doesn't mean we can't ever do it. Doesn't mean we have to say that the goal can never happen. But this is where it comes into where we did the vision boards last year, is we put that on a vision board. We make a journal entry about it. We write it down and say, this is something I want to do in the future. And then we allow, as we're moving through our day-to-day lives, we may pick up bits of information that will help us to achieve that goal, so that when we're actually ready to pursue it, suddenly we know more than we expected. And an example for this is several years ago, I wanted to start a podcast and I had never really listened to podcasts, didn't know anything about podcasts, and I don't even know where the idea to start a podcast came from. But I started thinking about it, and then I started realizing as I was studying how to do it, how much information I already knew. And it was like, wow, it's almost like I was meant to do this. I just didn't know I was meant to do this. And so when we have a feminine goal where there's not that time limit on it, but we can see in the distance something kind of vague that we want, we start gathering the things that we need. We're not even aware that we're doing it. It's just part of, they say life happens when you're, what is the saying about life happens while you're making your plan or something like that? Do you know that quote, MJ?
I do. I think you're right. I think it's life is what happens while you're planning for our life.
Yeah, something like that. And sometimes when you're looking at things from the softer, feminine, more passive, allowing things to happen, that energy, you're building up your resources so that when you decide you want to do something and you're ready to turn on that masculine energy to go for it, you have a lot more, you're much better prepared to do it, because you're not starting completely empty-handed. You have so much that you're already willing, that you can already bring with you. And I think that's part of the feminine power as well, is because I see us as see the feminine energy as that bigger picture, so you can see how the pieces might fit. It may be something totally unrelated. It may be something that you've learned in the kitchen, but suddenly that applies to fixing a car, or, there are just so many transferable skills. We always hear that when you've been a stay-at-home mom and you're going back into the workplace, what are your transferable skills? And these are the things we can bring towards those masculine goals once we're ready to say, yeah, I'm ready, let's go. those are those transferable skills and resources that we can bring to those projects and stuff.
Oh,
So-
Amanda shared the quote. Life happens when you're busy making other plans. She says,
Yeah.
I love that quote. I'm thank you for
Thank
telling
you.
us the exact words of the quote. It really is it really is very true, because we can plan for everything. I'm often known for saying launching it ugly. And the reason why I say that is I have a mentor who said that, and it really resonated with me, because I can spend all kinds of time making plans for launching something. And I get stuck, and 3 months later, I haven't launched it because, you know what? It wasn't pretty, and it wasn't packaged, and it wasn't this, and it wasn't that. And then I just get to a place like I did this morning, and I said, okay, I'm launching it ugly. Like, here it is, wellness in a nutshell. I have to walk the walk and talk the talk, and you can plan things forever. And unless you take that step forward, it happens around you. And it doesn't feel like you have a choice. It doesn't feel like you have control. So thank you so much for sharing that true quote.
And I just had an epiphany just as you were talking about that. You know how I've told you, MJ, that, I have the book and I've created quite a few courses.
Mhm.
And then I do nothing with them. But
Yep.
I reach the summit, I get the thing done, but then I do nothing with it. And it occurs to me that I enjoy the journey so much that I never set the destination as the results of writing the book or producing these courses for the selling part. That was never part of my goal.
Right.
It was always the process to create. And so I enjoyed the journey, I created, and then I never, when I do these things, I'm caught in that gap, like between the pain and the pleasure. So if the pain is that unfulfilled feeling of not having created something I feel called to create, and then the pleasure is the financial rewards of creating these things. And I go as far as that satisfying feeling gap of I'm away from that pain of not having created it, but I'm not emotionally connected to the pleasure of the financial rewards from what I've created.
So true.
So that's
There's the
really,
epiphany.
that's an epiphany for me.
Yeah. So anybody who is watching this now or in the replay, the sort of wrap up to that is that when you find yourself, when you're evaluating and when you're reflecting, and I'm a big proponent of journaling, and especially taking 10, 15, 20 minutes to journal about your day, about your goals, and really sort of looking at them and reflecting on them. Are you stuck? Like, are you getting to a place, but you haven't reached quite far enough? Like what Donna's talking about. She's reached her goal of creating a course, but the reach wasn't the end result, which is where it's released out into the world. And it's like she's carried it for 9 months. She's created a life, she's carried it for 9 months, but she hasn't allowed it to come out into the world and to be seen. And that's part of the evaluation process that we have to do, is asking ourselves, like, am I allowing my baby, this thing that I've created, or this thing that I've done, or this thing that I've accomplished, have I allowed that to come out into the world?
Well, see, and I would change that a little bit, because great analogy, but I left my baby in the hospital because I birthed them. They're real, they're tangible, but I left them in the hospital
because they're not out.
I never saw life with them.
Yeah. So, and that's not to say that every goal that you have needs to be seen and needs to be out in the world, but it is a question. If you're finding some frustration, like I am doing X, Y, and Z, and I'm not seeing the result of that, like why am I trying to achieve that goal? Then you have to it begs for that question of, well, what am I creating? What am I doing? What am I striving for? And is it going to its next best place? So I hear a lot of people talk about, I want to I want to write a book. And so any of us can write a book. Can you get that book published? What's it take? Like all of those parts of the goal. Do you get to the point of, is writing the book enough, even though it sits on the hard drive or it's printed and it gets bound maybe at Staples? Is that enough? And that's the next part of it, is how you actually measure the intangibles of the more feminine energy goals. Because when they're loosey-goosey on the sides, then you have to be able to sort of decide, am I getting what I want out of it? And if I'm not really truly measuring that with some, like, I got it to the printers and the publisher in 6 months, if that's not what we're doing for goal setting, which, you know, I agree with that wholeheartedly, that it needs to be a little bit looser for me, then I have to look at myself and go, well, how does it feel to be in this process? And once I've completed writing it, what's the next step for me? And so that's why I always get stuck in the, is it good enough? And I think that, so I am going to talk about women here. I do think that women get stuck in that cycle of, is it enough? Have I done enough? I think that's a very cultural, very female oriented place to be, and question to be asking yourself. And it's part of shadow work that I do and help people with, is, are you, what is making you question if you're enough? And so when you have goals that are a little looser, with a little less tangible, a little less tangibility in terms of whether you've accomplished it, then you have to start redefining what it looks like to accomplish something. I'm going to go back to my mental health days, and writing a treatment plan was always that place that I struggled with, because I always asked the questions like, it always has, like, something, and Joan will appreciate this, having been in education, the treatment plans that say things like, little Johnny will have 5 positive social interactions in the week. Okay, how are we measuring that? What does that look like? What is positive to me looking from the outside? Is that positive to him? Is that pro-social to him? Like, all of those questions come up. And so then it becomes, well, how do I know that it's been accomplished? How does it feel to accomplish it? So I guess I kind of have beat this one to death here, but I think that this is where things start to fray, and people start getting frustrated, and the book goes the book goes someplace, the treatment notes go someplace, and people just start being very superficial with it. And I guess that's the end of my message, is like, this, what we're talking about tonight, is how we take goals from that less corporate, less masculine energy sort of space to more loosey-goosey, but things that actually have real strong meaning to us.
Yeah. That's the big thing, and that's perfect segue into the conclusion that I come up for this, is it really is all about finding your own way to achieve the goals that you set for yourself. Ask yourself, evaluate, is it a dumb goal though? And whether you actually use the formulaic SMART goals or not. But when you've set a goal for yourself, ask yourself, is it something that you're relying on someone else to do something for you so that you can accomplish it? If you're depending on someone else or a specific circumstance or situation, when I get that job, when I win $1 million, those types of things, are you putting time and energy towards something that isn't likely to come about just because you're depending on someone else? That's a bit different from saying you're depending on someone to help and you're willing to find other people to help you. But when you've narrowed it down so closely to just one person or specific circumstances, instead of allowing for, so maybe you don't win the $1 million, but maybe you get that great promotion at work that gives you significant monetary increase that you can start to work towards whatever it is you would have done with one lump sum lottery winning. And so it's reevaluating how you're doing things. If you're not willing to do the work, be honest with yourself about that. That's a way for you to release the guilt and the pressure and the feelings of I should and I have to do this. Allow yourself that grace and just say, you know what? Not going to do that. And you may be willing to do it today, tomorrow. Nope, not going to do it. And that's okay. You don't have to beat yourself up. You don't have to fill yourself full of blame and shame and self-hatred. Just allow that some days it's not going to happen. It can be okay.
Right.
And then the motivation. You know, if your momentum and your motivation, if it just comes and goes because it's really not something that you're sure you want, that you want to commit to and stuff, just allow yourself, yeah, there'll be good days, there'll be bad days. I'm not going to focus solely on this goal. I'm just going to let what happens happens. And this is great for people that want to lose weight or manage their weight in a better way. You will have your good days, you will have your bad days. You keep your eyes on the prize and you say, I would like to be at a healthier weight. If you lose 1 pound in 6 months, you are at a healthier weight because you've lost a pound. And take the pressure off of yourself. These goals, there's the difference between the good, healthy, motivating pressure and the negative kind of spiraling you into depths of despair pressure. It's up to you. Check your heart to figure out which way it is. If you're leaning forward and you're saying, okay, I'm scared as heck to do this, but I'm going to give it a try. Or I don't have the money, but you know what? I'm taking a chance that by the time my credit card comes due, I'll be able to pay for it. And you're leaning forward, that's that pressure and that drive that's going to take you forward. But if you're kind of cowering back and saying, no, the risk is too great. Nope, oh, it just feels heavy. Release those goals. They're not worth it. And then if the goal belongs to someone else, if it's someone else's calling and you can help them, and that's your choice, help them. Help it with the intention that you're doing this because you love, you want to help them and support them. If you start to feel those inklings of resentment and anger and bitterness, that's when you say, hey, you know what? I know I promised you I'd help, but I can't. This is taking too much out of me. We are taking our power back and putting in our personal boundaries because their goals matter. They are very important to them. We don't have to own them. We don't have to become the driving force. This is something that I see happen frequently. I'm guilty of it. Earl will say he wants to do something, and I suddenly start making plans. It's like, oh my gosh, okay, I can do this. And then I start taking over his dream. That's for him to do. I have my own dreams I should be following. But a lot of us, this is what we fall into. And this is where we have to establish our boundaries and set those limits on ourselves, start communicating effectively with the people in our lives who have come to depend on us because we've let them. It takes time. It's simple, not hard. I mean, it's very hard to do, but it is very simple. Once you start setting those boundaries and explaining and sharing why you're doing things, it gets so much easier because the pressure we put on ourselves to support other people with our time and our energy is more than they expect most of the time. And when we say we need to pull back, frequently they're like, okay, no big deal, I'll find another way. In those relationships where you feel the pullback, the pushback, and they say, no, I'm counting on you, I'm counting on you. Sometimes that's where the real hard work comes in. It's hard work for you, it's hard work for them. It's establishing those boundaries, setting the timelines. Okay, I will babysit your children for another 6 months, and then you need to find someone. Following through, because personal boundaries, it's critical. If you want to make the changes in your life and reach for some of these really amazing goals and heart callings you have for yourself, you have to claim the time for yourself, the energy for yourself, the space for yourself.
So
And
true.
and you can do it however way, whatever way you want. You find your way. We talk about wellness your way. No one else is dictating to you what you should be doing or could be doing or what you want to do. You know the answers. You know the answers. And it's up to you to find the way. And once you decide on your path and you allow yourself to move and ebb and flow and try something, see if it works or not, and try something else, just enjoy the process, enjoy the journey. Because when you reach that goal, or even if you don't, you will become someone you wouldn't even imagine that you could become just by attempting it. So, yeah, so that's are your SMART goals dumb, and the feminine approach to SMART goals.
Absolutely. So I'm going to just add a couple of pieces here. I mean, Amanda, if you are still listening, which I think you might be, maybe not, I'm wondering if you would give me permission to do a little exercise with what you said your goal was in the beginning. So if you're still here and you're listening, let me know. If not, I'm going to actually sort of take and go into another tangent, but I'll watch the comments to see if you're still here and have heard that. So I had the occasion to have a conversation with somebody over the weekend, and she said, we were talking about this particular workshop, and she said, I don't set goals. Okay. And I was actually quite surprised by this person, because I thought, of all of the people that I know, I would have assumed that she set goals. And she says, well, I probably set goals, but I don't do it in a formal way. Okay. And she went on to explain to me that the reason that she doesn't do it in a formal way is because she doesn't want to have to measure anything. She doesn't want to have to say, I've accomplished that or I haven't accomplished it. It's sort of like the pass fail thing. And I think that for her, what she explained was that she gets kind of hung up on, if I am not successful, then that equates to me being a failure. And so as we talk about shifting mindset to allowing ourselves to have choice, to allowing ourselves to have boundaries, then we also have to shift that mindset of good versus bad, right versus wrong, pass versus fail. And we live in a society that we have all of those things. It's a very black and white society. And so if you think about what we've said about SMART goals, they're very black and white. They're very linear. There's lots of boxes and lots of checks, and I've done this, and yes, I've done this, and I have this action step, and I've got that action step, and I've accomplished this, and I've accomplished that, and oops, I failed at that. And that's what she doesn't like about goal setting. And so I kind of am sitting here going, so here's the challenge. And here's my challenge to you guys is, when you're looking at your goals, the things that you want to accomplish, and we haven't talked about, numbers of goals and that sort of stuff, but start small. Let's not, we're not going to change the world overnight for ourselves or for anybody else. So start small with it. But when you look at those goals, start to reframe the way you think of them in terms of pass, fail, success or failure, good or bad, and start taking those particular pieces of language out of them and out of your thought process. Because what it really comes down to is, how do I feel in this process? How do I want to feel at the end? When I'm at the final destination, how do I want to feel? And why am I doing it? And so that's my challenge to you guys, is as you're looking at your goals, can you, one, sort of shift that thinking from black and white, good and bad, to a more global feeling of the whys? And is your goal truly an action step, or is it a real goal? Much like my own son, his goals, as he said them the day of on January 1st when we did the first workshop, was I want to be a more present father. I want to what was another one? I want to be more mindful when I'm hiking so that I'm more present in nature. I have a dog and the dog loves to be in nature and blah, blah, blah. What he came to was that really what he wanted to do was live his life with more intention. And that was a very good overarching goal. What he had underneath here were real action steps, and they were great action steps. So as you're going through this process, really sort of sussing, is that the word? Sussing. Out and fleshing out is really where I was trying to get to, out where it is, what it is that you're accomplishing. Is that goal to be in a triathlon? Is it because that is the destination, is to be in a triathlon, or is the destination to be healthier? And
for me, so for me, my goal was to be a person who could compete in a triathlon.
Okay.
Because I was so non-athletic. And so I had this mindset, this image of myself that I was so non-athletic. And so to compete in a triathlon, that was just, it's a feat of athletic prowess, right?
Right.
So becoming a person who could do something I never would have pictured myself becoming.
Okay. So I would, if you and I were working together, I would say to you, go deeper with that. Just go deeper with that and see what that overarching goal is. Maybe you're going to come back to me and say, nope, there's nothing deeper than that. But much like what I kept doing to Nick was, what's deeper, what's underneath that, or what's up higher than that, and really start getting to the feels and the whys. And I think if we go into it with that sort of mindset, yes, you may come out with goals that are very black and white. Like if I do this and I do this and I do this, I'm going to accomplish this. And that's okay. Weight loss journey is not that linear, because you can't say, I'm going to lose 2 pounds every week until 10 weeks have passed, and then I'm going to be 20 pounds down and I'm going to be 2 sizes down. It doesn't really work that way, because I can tell you from my own experience, I've gone 2 pant sizes down and I haven't lost a stitch of weight. I just have shifted, been more active, toned places that I hadn't normally toned, and felt better perhaps than if the scales had come down 20 pounds. So depending on what it is that you're looking for, depends on whether or not that's a linear process or not. So just some things to think about as you go forth with this process.
Well, and one thing that when you were just talking about that reminded me is we hear of celebrities and rich people that then they look at their lives and they say that they're really not happy, that they don't, money can't buy love, money doesn't buy happiness. Mm-hmm. And we see these measures of success, and they've set goals to win Oscars or win the Super Bowl. And sometimes they achieve them, but it doesn't really mean that much to them because there's no real emotional connection to it. It's a goal, it's something to be achieved. But they feel like that says something about them, but they don't really experience it on that emotional level for themselves for what it means for them.
Right.
And so it's kind of like worshiping a false god type of thing, or because you think it's going to give you something and then it doesn't. I hear this frequently with people who lose weight. They think that once they've lost 50 pounds, suddenly all of their troubles will go away because people didn't like them because they were overweight. People they didn't feel good about themselves or like themselves because they were overweight. And so they have all of these relationship issues with others, with themselves because of their weight, or so they think, but then they lose the weight and suddenly people don't like them because suddenly she's become a catty witch.
Right.
But really she was always a catty witch to begin with.
Right. Right.
But she sees it as the result of losing the weight. So I'd rather weigh 50 pounds more and be, fat and happy. But you really weren't fat and happy before.
Right. Yeah,
So-
it's interesting because you see that phenomenon a lot with people who do gastric bypass. And
Yeah.
I was part of the gastric bypass team for a number of years, doing a multidisciplinary approach to that. And that was something that we saw oftentimes in follow-up was, people's not being happy with themselves. And so that was really what the goal was. Yes, health, weight, weighing less, all of those things can feed into it, but it is taking it to the next place of what am I unhappy because of the weight? Am I unhappy because I'm not in a good, healthy, happy space?
Yeah.
And so as you go through this, and I don't want to sort of beleaguer this too much, but as you go through this, that's what my suggestions are, is if you start to go down through the SMART goals and you're turning them over and you're asking your questions, are they dumb? Or you're going through that acronym, or are you going to take it the next step and try to sort of blend those into a more masculine, feminine balance? Then it has to be about the feels and it has to be about the whys. And so my recommendation, if you've not done that with somebody before, is find somebody to do that with. There's lots of coaches out there that do life coaching, that do transition coaching. I do mindset coaching, and I am shifting over to that. Donna does mindfulness consulting. Donna's very resistant to the
I
coach.
show up for these workshops with MJ. This is what I do. I've been a lifelong student teacher.
So, there are lots and lots of people out there to give you some support around that. And if you are catching this on the replay, or if you are here and you want to talk about that, please feel free to reach out. You message me. If you go to presenceofmindwellness.com, my contact information is there, email address, my cell phone. I enjoy having these conversations with people. I am not everybody's cup of tea, and I know that. And I have in my tool bag a bunch of resources and a bunch of coaches that could help you. Another one that's on is with us tonight watching this. So I give the shout outs. We all come from a little bit different perspective, but I think that we're all in a very similar place around getting to the feels and the whys, because that's what's going to change mindset. That's what's going to help you to accomplish those goals. And that's what's going to take you to the next level of your life and really, truly being your happiest, most authentic person. And whatever that looks like for you. And we all come to that a little bit differently. We all come to it from a different standpoint. So that's my message. And I want to thank Donna. Do you have anything to add before I sort of close up tonight?
Nope, I'm ready for bed.
I'm a night owl. Donna is not. But when she's up at 4 a.m. sending me email messages, I'm not seeing them for the most part.
I'm usually in my jammies by now. I'm ready to crawl off to bed.
So I just want to thank everybody who has been here tonight. There's been some folks in and out. There has been lots of great comments, lots of great input that's coming through on messages. And I love doing these. Donna has been a great partner in these. We have 2 more coming up. We have one on March 1st. Same thing, same format, 6:30 to 7, open communication. 7 to 8:30 is going to be, we are going to be talking about shifting mindset. Do we have a title for that one, Donna?
I think so.
I think we do.
It's something about limiting beliefs, I think.
Oh, yes, that's right. Limiting beliefs and mindset, and shifting to mindset, I believe is the name of it, is what we finalized on. And then April 1st, April Fool's Day, we have our fourth in this series, and that is sort of wrapping it all together. And we are going to take a case study, more likely than not. We're going to take a case study in that one, and we're going to work it all the way through, sort of with SMART goals, with asking the questions of, are my SMART goals dumb? Mixing the feminine energy. We'll probably do life wheel. Long story short, it will probably be based on either myself or Donna's goals, or somebody that we know and have worked with. We haven't quite gotten there, but that would be my guess is how we're going to handle that. It should be, both of those should be good times. We're going to do those free. And then this is the drum roll. We're going to soft talk about this today. These workshops will be listed in our member vault, and you guys that have been part of Goal Setting Cafe are going to have a chance to be foundational members of Goal Setting Cafe. And so we're going to, over the next 2 months, we're going to lay out more information about that, but you'll have access to videos, you'll have access to materials, you'll have access to myself and Donna around goal setting, and you'll be the founding folks that are hopefully going to be a really rich community of people who are goal setting throughout the year, because I don't believe that we should goal set only in January. We should be doing it all the time as things pop up. You know, if something pops up in June and July, I'm not going to wait until January to say, okay, I'm going to put that on my goal sheet here. So anyways, we are looking to build and grow this community and the work that we do with folks. So did I miss anything?
Yeah, well, I would just like to add, maybe it's just a clarification, but when MJ is talking about that will help you with setting your goals and such, it isn't just the initial setting of your goal, but this is also your opportunity to speak with one of us and say, okay, this is where I'm struggling. I don't know how to get past this point. And we can help you with that, identifying where you have that mindset block, because more than likely it's a mindset block. It may be something that's a block with your habits. You know, you just are spending too much time on social media and you can't seem to break that cycle. And that's something that I like working with people around, is their daily habits. But mindset and daily habits, and for me, the personal boundaries, these are all things that tie together that impact how we can move forward.
Absolutely.
But we'll have that support. It's not just you saying, okay, my goal is to blah, 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 and call that good. No, it's helping you to actually achieve it.
Wonderful. Thank you. I'm glad you jumped in to do that clarification. So for now, I'm going to say good night, and we're going to let Donna go to bed. And, if you're catching this on replay, one or the other or both of us are always monitoring these comments and stuff. It may not be immediate, but we definitely monitor them and get notifications of them. So please leave your comments, private message me. Like I said, go to the website. You'll be able to find out how to get in touch with me in alternative ways. And I'm happy to have a conversation and happy to see where I might help. So you guys enjoy, go forth, prosper, and we will see you soon right here.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.